Welcome back to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller sitting in today with career counselor Rubina Azizdin. Hold on one second, Rubina. I got something in my email today that says that you have been promoted from career counselor to the Associate Director of Career Services. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yes.
I mean, obviously, fans of the Nightly News, you've been on several times in the past. You do so much with career services. You do so much working with our students. But you've been doing some other things as well. Do you mind maybe walking us through the past few months and maybe some of the reasons behind you getting this promotion? We're also happy for you.
Thank you. Absolutely. So one of my big responsibilities is to build partnerships and relationships with our community so that we have resources for our events and job fairs and have those employer connections and stuff like that. So I've been doing a lot of that throughout the years. I also have been assigned as the point of contact for our international students who will be seeking jobs and internships. So I had to go through a training process, and now I'm considered a designated school official through the Immigration and Naturalization Services. And so that requires for me to be on top of policy, procedures, paperwork for our national students to make sure that they are on top of everything that they need for their internship requirements and working requirements to be here and to be on point with policies and regulations as an international student.
What is it about Central Penn College that not only helped you develop your career, but also is a place that you want to be going forward? Because obviously, when you were offered this promotion, this is the kind of thing where you want to be here for going forward. What is it about Central Penn College that you're proud to spend your career here?
Well, I love it because like our president had mentioned before, we are a unique institution. And so that means there's a lot of room for growth. And there's a lot of open-mindedness when it comes to growth. And there's a lot of embracing of diversity right now. And I feel like the college appreciates that and embraces that. And that's what my background is, appreciating diversity, coming up with ideas and, moving forward with ideas. And honestly speaking, I've never had a day where I've, proposed something and it's been denied or, put on hold. So I appreciate that. And I feel like there's, Central Penn appreciates like my professional perspective on things. And it's just a growing institution where, they're open to change. And so I'm open for that. I enjoy that. So I feel like I have room to grow here.
Well, speaking of professional perspective, off air during our pre-show meeting, we'd actually talked about that you are currently enrolled in your PhD program, and you said that you're very, very close to completion. Do you mind sharing, what are you going for, and maybe what some of the research is going to entail that you're going to do on your capstone project?
Sure. So I'm in a educational leadership program with Capella University. I completed my master's with them too a couple of years ago, and I just love the institution. And also, since it's online, it's just really flexible for me with just my lifestyle in general. So my dissertation, I'm just going to be starting that really soon. But I plan to do it in the area of women in leadership, particularly in the higher education field, and effects on maybe mental health, physical health, that kind of arena. I'm still working on it. It's pretty raw right now. So, and as you probably know, doctoral learners will come up with ideas, and then, as they move forward, it gets refined more and more.
Of course. And as I've talked previously, I'm looking forward to beginning my doctoral program in 2019. So
congratulations.
Well, I'm not there yet, so don't congratulate me just yet. But just one final question before we move on to talk about the Women's Leadership Conference, which is truly why you're here. Yeah. Obviously, we had to have an aside with this important news that came out recently. One final thing that I did want to ask is, what are some of the new aspects of your job? I mean, this promotion comes with, I'm sure some maybe additional duties. How will your job change from maybe how it was a couple months ago to where you envision it in the future?
Well, there will be more management-related tasks. I will be serving on more committees around on campus. Also, another level of community engagement where I'll be attending conferences and other events that will lead to more connections to the college, spending more time in that area. Also, managing our student workers that we have in our office and those kinds of duties and tasks.
Well, which leads to a perfect segue because obviously one of your tasks, basically, to the best of my knowledge, ever since you've been here, was being in charge of the Women's Leadership Conference. So this is obviously one of the major tasks that you have. And for any of you out there listening that have ever done something like this, it is extremely time-consuming to put together something like this, whether it's just booking the speakers, putting together an agenda, or even just marketing it to those who you potentially might come to the campus. So I do just want to tell everybody the Women's Leadership Conference will take place on April the 23rd. This will be in the Conference Center, and it'll be from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Very excellent opportunity for any Central Penn student, faculty, or staff, as in it's free, and community members for a very inexpensive $35. To be honest, I've been looking into doing some, going to some different conferences, and usually they have another zero on there.
That's right.
So even for community members, the $35 is extremely affordable and, again, free for Central Penn students, faculty, and staff. So, Rubina, before we get into too much of the details, can you tell us about some of the things that we can expect from the Women's Leadership Conference, some highlights?
Sure. First of all, it's going to be a very high-energy event. This is the third year that we're running it. So the first year, you host an event and you really don't know what to expect. The next year, you kind of put things together and you're like, all right, I'm going to get things right this time. And then hopefully this year, you take those two first years and you make it even better. So I think this year is going to be even more better just based on the registrations. Right now, I'm at 120 people who are registered to come. Majority of those people are community members. We do have students from other schools. It is completely free for all students. Even if you're a doctoral learner, you are welcome to come for free. So yeah, it's just going to be very high energy, lots of people from different backgrounds that are going to be there. We're going to have vendors, and I select my vendors, so that they give our attendees some type of entertainment or something that is of interest to them in between sessions. So we will have speaking sessions during the day. We'll have vendors, like we have somebody that makes their own chocolate. That's going to be there. We have somebody that is going to be setting up a tea bar and have tea tastings. We're going to have people with jewelry, people with clothing boutiques that are going to be there. Somebody who owns their art gallery, they're going to be there with artwork to purchase. So there's going to be all of that happening. And then we also have a makeover room where we're going to have professional headshots and hair and makeup that people can get done. And also we're going to have somebody that's going to be styling people. So if you need a blazer or a sweater or a jacket for your picture, or you need to purchase something, that will be available as well for people to access.
And something that I've talked to Steve about before on the podcast is one of the initiatives that's coming out of the Career Resource Center, and that is the professional clothing that's available. So even if a student would be interested in coming, but maybe they don't have anything quite professional enough to wear to something like this, they could always make an appointment with you and or one of the other members of the team and come up and be fitted for a professional attire to come to the event.
Exactly. We have a huge rack of clothes that are just sitting there in our office. So yeah, we've had students come through for the last couple of months and they've gotten some great deals. Some things have been brand new, some things are lightly used, but it's all in great condition and ready to wear. So it's a great opportunity for students to come out and stock up their closets.
Well, we do want to talk about some of the individual speakers that you're having. There's one specifically that may be very familiar to some of our Central Penn listeners, and that's Professor Maria Chow.
That's right.
She is going to be overseeing the art of the shameless plug, how to self-promote effectively. What was it about asking Maria to be a part of this? Obviously, she's done some wonderful things with Reclaiming My Time, 4 sold-out shows, amazing press, in the community. Why was Maria at the top of your list of people to bring in?
Maria is just a very unique and awesome person. Professor Chow is just, a great role model to our students. And I think we need a face like that for an event like this so people are motivated to come. And she's a very good speaker. She writes very well. She speaks very well. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to have her come out and speak. And she's very relatable too. So I feel like that's what attendees are looking for. They're not just looking for somebody who's professional. They're looking for somebody who can relate and they can resonate with. And Maria has all those qualities. So I'm super excited. This is the first time actually that we have a Central Penn employee or family member presenting in this conference. So I'm very excited to have that.
And trust me, I guarantee that she can give you some information about the art of the shameless plug, because trust me, she shamelessly plugged Reclaiming My Time and did a wonderful job. I'm still just blown away by the 4 sold-out shows, so she certainly can speak to the shameless plug. Somebody else I wanted to talk to you about is actually somebody that I had the fine fortune of meeting at a previous presentation that she gave here on campus, and that's Rebecca Korn. And I've actually since followed her on LinkedIn, and she is a very unbelievably motivational person. And her presentation will be called The Power of Vulnerability and Authenticity. Can you talk a little bit more about how you know Rebecca or what she's bringing to the table for the Women's Leadership Conference?
Sure. So Rebecca, I met, actually, she was one of the speakers a while ago for our leadership lecturer series, I believe in the Capitol Blue Cross. And so I saw that she was coming to be a speaker at that. And I did hear of her name and see her name, in the community quite a few times. So after that event, her and I met up for lunch and we got to know each other. And just after conversations after that, I also started following her on social media, and we have formed a friendship, and I see everything that she's doing. She's involved a lot in the community with different organizations and things like that. So her and I have run into each other throughout the months. And what I wanted for this conference was diversity. I wanted people that are, obviously who are pretty well seasoned in their careers and things like that. But then I also wanted other people who might be mid-career or who might be more relatable to our students, age-wise, and that sort of thing. And I thought that Rebecca would be that perfect fit. And she has a lot of insight, just from her professional background. She works with people from all different backgrounds as well, and has been through a lot in her life from what I learned during that leadership lecture series. So I thought she would have a lot to say and good information to give to our attendees at the conference. One
of the things that stuck with me about Rebecca was that she worked with Tony Robbins for a long period
of time. That's right,
yeah. And you can just tell with now she's not in she's more in the financial sector, so she's not in as much as far as presenting. I know that she does a lot of presentations, but just her ability to captivate an audience. That was one, and I've been to a lot of different lectures and things like that on campus, but hers always stood out to me just because of how skilled she was as a presenter. So she's definitely a highlight. I don't want to detract from any of the speakers, but unfortunately we can't talk about each and every one of them. So right. if you were one that was not mentioned, please, don't get mad at me. We will certainly put a little write-up of everybody. The final person I did want to talk about, though, is the morning keynote speaker, Keely Childers Haney. Mm-hmm. And she's doing a presentation called "To Succeed, You Must First Fail." How did you meet up with her? How is she, why did she want to get involved with this? Tell us a little bit more about her.
Absolutely. So Keely and I met after she did a story on me for their Susquehanna Style magazine, a while back, which was released, I believe, in November. So after that release, her and I met up at an event that Susquehanna Style was promoting or sponsoring, which was called the Women of Style. So at that event, her and I got to speak a lot, and I just found out other information about her from other people, I guess, that are in the area, actually before that event. So when I met her at that event, her and I got to talking, and I found out some more information, and I just felt like she would be a great person to speak because she does a lot of speaking engagements in the community as well, and she promotes women in the community. She promoted me in my networking group, and I really appreciated that. So another piece of my, I guess, my vision for this women's conference is to lift up other women, not just to provide information for attendees for the conference, but to lift each other up. And that's all about women empowerment. So I felt like she's helping all these women. She helped me, and, to promote my group and to give out information. So I wanted her to come to our college and kind of give out information as well to our women and help other women. And also from my speaking to her, she knows what it's like to start, as a brand new professional. She was kind of giving me insight on how she built up her life to where she is right now. So I thought that was very interesting and intriguing. And that is where she came out with her topic for the conference that she's going to be speaking on.
What about the message? What about the topic? It's something that I talk a lot about in class. I'm maybe more, I don't, maybe my teaching style is maybe a little bit different. Maybe it's not. I'm not in the classroom with other professors all the time. But I am very open about my past and how difficult it was for me to find a career position that I really loved when I got out of school. And I was actually just talking about this today. We were talking about the importance of writing in public relations. And so many of our students, not even just in our department, but college-wide, don't have the confidence in their writing ability. And I tried to explain to them that, just because you get a bad grade on a paper doesn't mean that you're not a good writer, doesn't mean that you don't have ability. It just means that sometimes we need to get a bad grade every once in a while to keep us not only honest, but to take us to that next level, to realize where the error in our ways was. I think this message, on the surface, I don't want people to think, oh, well, I'm a failure. No, that's not it. It's for all of us, every single person that's in a professional career position has failed at something in their lives, and more than likely multiple things. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you right now, without some of the failures, I would not be sitting in this room today. And I don't mean to speak for you, but I would imagine
I'm in the same boat. Same boat. Yes, that's right. And I think it's important for students to know that, to understand that people don't just get into a higher level position or get a promotion or get this dream job that people see on the surface. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of tears, and it takes a lot of passion to do what they're doing. And it just doesn't come easy. There's a lot of things that people face. They have to work really hard. There's a lot of failures sometimes in between. And so I think what she's going to be speaking about or speaking to is going to be very important for people to understand and learn and take away from.
Just a few more things I wanted to talk about. Number one, I do want to remind everybody, we're talking about the Women's Leadership Conference. This is going to take place on April 23rd in the Conference Center at Central Penn College on the Summerdale campus. Free to any college student and Central Penn faculty and staff. $35 for community members. In the morning, there will be a continental breakfast from 8 to 9. There will be the keynote speaker that we just discussed. You're going to have a couple of breakout sessions, and there is going to be an etiquette lunch, followed by the Yamajo fashion show. So it's a full day of excitement, a wonderful opportunity to network. So let's talk about some of the benefits. Let's say a student or faculty or staff is sitting out there right now listening to the podcast. Can you give us just a few benefits? Why might a student come to something like this that maybe has never been to something like this before?
Sure. So when I first came up with this idea of the conference, going back 3 years ago, it actually came from, I had attended a professional or higher level conference of this sort. It was a women's empowerment engagement type of conference in the community. And I came out of there meeting people and meeting new people, learning new things, professionally. And I had this awesome feeling leaving there. And then I came back here and I said, why don't we have something like that for our students? And I wish that our student would experience a conference, professional conference, before they graduate and actually have to do that for professional development, And a lot of people don't have that, and they kind of, it gives them anxiety when they have to go to a real conference, when they're professionals. So I wanted to create that experience for our students to be able to go to a conference, understand what that means. It doesn't mean sitting at a table and talking to people, because I get that question all the time. Oh, I don't want to sit there all day, and understand what that means when somebody says I'm going to a conference. By them attending a full-scale conference, getting that experience, meeting new people in the community, meeting other students from the community, that whole networking piece is very important. Another piece of this conference is the etiquette lunch. It's important for everybody to be reminded of a little etiquette here and there, even us professionals who have been in the job force or workforce for a really long time. So it's just important to do that. So I decided that instead of just having a traditional lunch, I would incorporate a learning piece to that. And we've done that in the last couple of years, and people have loved it because we get to eat and experience a 5-course lunch, and it's very good food. It's almost gourmet food, I would say. And you actually learn how to eat it and be appropriate. And some of the students that come are getting ready to go on internship, or they're graduating, and so forth. So it's very beneficial for them to understand those skills. And then the last piece is just to also know that, you can have fun. And not all of the events on campus are going to be just professional development or whatever. It's also that you can have fun, and our events are fun, and it is worth your time.
I think that the piece to me, whenever I was in school and attended something like this, was the networking piece, because networking is one of these words that so few people, if you would point at them and say, what's networking, they wouldn't be able to give you a succinct definition. Yeah. This is networking at its core. You're meeting extremely influential people in the community. The people in the audience are all there for the same reason. You have the chance to meet with them, maybe follow up with them on social media, and if nothing else, have an influencer. But maybe even one step further, down the line, these people might be able to help you with an internship or a career position based on a chance meeting that you had with them at this leadership conference. So exactly. I think that's a wonderful piece. Last question, Rubina. Let's say students are signed up and they want to go to this. Can you just give us a couple of quick tips for success, maybe a little checklist prior to going to the event, or maybe the night before, that they can make sure that they have everything ready to go?
Sure. So before even going, all the attendees are required to register for this. And I know that this podcast is going to be released after my deadline. So I will be willing to stretch that deadline for students if they are interested in coming, first of all. But when they do register, they will be able to see who the speakers are. And we have them register because I want them to select speakers and sessions that are relevant to them and their interests. So they get to select their speakers and to see also the schedule for the day. So I would say really look at the schedule, make sure you know what's happening that day so they don't feel overwhelmed. Know that we're going to be there to support them. Sometimes people just need that guidance. So I will be there. There's going to be other staff members there from the college who are going to be attending. We're all open to helping and, figuring things out. And know that it's not just going to be a day of just sitting and listening to people. It's going to be fun. There's going to be activity. There's going to be breaks. There's lots of stuff happening. We have vendors. We have a fashion show. We have food. There's a lot of things happening. So I would say get your information, know what's happening for the day. Second thing, dress professionally. This is a professional level conference. There are going to be people there from the community, a lot of key players from the community who are very influential, like you said. So they want to make a good impression on these people for future connections, networking, internships, what have you. And also be open-minded, be ready to speak to people from all backgrounds. So I would just say, do your research, know who's going to be there, know what sessions you're going to be going to, know where you're going to be on time, and make sure that you stay for the entire event. Sometimes people decide that, okay, I'm just going to stay for one or two things and I'm going to leave. Be ready to spend your day there. I mean, if you're going to register for this, really take advantage of it. Take that day and experience what a conference is and have an open mind and meet people. So there's a couple of things that I think would be expected.
Well, Rubina, number one, congratulations on your promotion. No one on this campus deserves it more than you, and how hard you've worked over the years. And we just, from the Nightly News, we really want to thank you for everything you've done for the college, and it's very well deserved. Number two, we wish you the best of luck at the Women's Leadership Conference. Again, April 23rd. Rubina did say that since this podcast will be released just after the deadline, she is willing to expand that deadline for just a couple of days. So I will put that also, all the information to to register for the Women's Leadership Conference will be up on the piece that accompanies this. Rubina, thank you so much for organizing this. Thank you so much for giving our students a free opportunity to have such a wonderful conference here on campus with so many influential individuals coming here. So thank you just so much for everything that you've done for not only just the conference, but for the college.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your sweet words. It means a lot. And honestly, it's a privilege to me to be working here and to be working with professors such as you and Professor Chow and other professors who have been very supporting of, our events and our work that comes out of the Career Services Office. We really appreciate you as well. I mean, it's all teamwork. We wouldn't really be where we are without each other. So thank you so much for everything that you do as well. Really appreciate it.
Certainly not a problem. All right. So this is the first time I get to call you this. So for the Associate Director of Career Services, Rubina Azizdin. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
Hi, this is Brian Christiana. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast, a part of the Nightly News Media Club here at Central Penn College.
Welcome back to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller sitting in today with former Senior Deputy Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, John Butchar. Fans of the podcast might remember John was on this time last year, and he's come back today. He joined us in my Communications 345 Media and Politics today to discuss state and local government. John, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Paul.
There were two things that we mainly wanted to discuss today, one on a national level and one on the state level. The first on the national level is there's been, I guess it's easy to say, an unprecedented amount of turnover in the Trump White House. Can you discuss some of the things? Now, we are recording this a little bit before it is released, so we are going with the information that we do have. But can you discuss some of the impacts that this turnover has as far as internationally goes for how our country is represented throughout the world?
Well, both nationally and internationally, the constant turnover and the as-yet failure to staff key positions throughout government is just hamstringing our ability to do anything. For example, the State Department, everyone would agree, is certainly one of the most important parts of government. The Secretary of State is an extremely prestigious and important position, and virtually all of the top positions in the State Department have not been filled. Of keynote, currently Trump is recently talking about meeting Kim Jong-un of North Korea. When you look at the State Department tree, all the undersecretaries and assistant secretaries who deal with that region, the Asia, Korea, etc., those spots are open. They have not yet been filled, even though Trump's been in office a year. Those positions still have not been filled. So all those individuals, offices that would be expected to provide the best background, the best approach, everything involving with meeting with a leader like Un, frankly, there's nobody there. Trump has failed to put people in those offices, and he has people leaving daily because there's no consistent policy. There's no rational policy at times. Trump will say something one day, he'll completely change it the next. And of course, on an international level, that just drives our allies nuts because they look to the United States as a beacon of light, a leader in the free world on different important issues. And this administration has basically abdicated its role as leader. The free world is not looking to the United States now for leadership in different areas. We pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords.
Which is a horrific issue. If you want to, we can talk about that maybe in just a little bit. But that was definitely something that we've talked about in class several times and what impact that could have on the future of our entire planet.
Well, and it can, and it will. But that's just one symptom of what's going on, one example of what's going on in this administration. He brings people in. If they don't agree, it turns out they don't agree as closely with his policies, they're gone or they're resigning because they can't work in the environment where their expertise is being ignored. And, of course, the issue with Rex Tillerson, frankly, when he appointed Rex Tillerson Secretary of State, I was concerned. Businessman, big oil, how that impact international environmental change, et cetera. But I've actually been pretty pleased with the fact that Tillerson has provided kind of sound, rational, cool head in the White House, and that's sorely lacking. I think he has established somewhat of a relationship, started to, with our key allies, and that takes a while. And when you constantly have turnover and new people, the allies don't know the person, they can't trust the person, and frankly, the policies of the United States, which are not clearly articulated and can change on the whim of a Trump tweet, it's very frustrating on an international level to know how to deal with the United States or know whether they can follow the United States anymore.
So a better question maybe, I think, for me, is part of the allure to Donald Trump when he was running had to do with the fact that he wasn't a Washington insider, that he was an outsider, and he wasn't a career politician. And so many people, I believe, voted for Trump because of this specific reason. Do you think that because he is not a politician or a career politician that this has led to some of this major turnover, just because he maybe doesn't quite understand how things are supposed to work?
Well, I don't think he ever really understood what he was getting into. I think he has a background where he's always been an emperor in his own company. And I think he viewed the presidency as another form of empire, where he would have everybody do his bidding and do his thing. And now he finds that you need cooperation. You need cooperation from your adversaries as well as your own party, and there has to be some type of agreement to move forward with anything, and it frustrates him. He brings in people with certain, or actually with a lot of lack of expertise. Many of his appointments have zero expertise in the areas in which they're appointed. That has a debilitating effect on those agencies to get their job done. If you're a career employee, and most of the business of government is not done by elected officials, it's done by career employees with expertise in their area. When they're working hard every day and basically a political figurehead is appointed to lead their agency with no expertise, no understanding of what they do, it's crushing for morale. It's not good government, and it results in people leaving or just ineffective agencies. In this case, and in the White House itself, there's never been the type of turnover that there's been. It's astonishing. More people have already left this administration either voluntarily or by being shown out the door than in any other administration's full 4-year terms. It's a really incredible amount of turnover. One of the concerns is that much of the White House staff, many of the people surrounding Trump, do not have security clearance and are not capable of getting security clearance because they have things going on right now that are under investigation. And he has staffed his office with people like that who have all kinds of skeletons in the closet, and not even in the closet, but currently out there on the table in the courts. About the time he fired Tillerson, Homeland Security, I believe, was the party actually showing Trump's closest aide out the door. He was forcibly removed from the White House grounds, was not even allowed to go back in his office to get his coat, was allowed to clean nothing out of his office, and was forcibly removed from the grounds. Because he had no security clearance and had been dealing with issues in which he was not entitled to see.
One thing that I also found interesting is recently it's come out that in a report that Donald Trump had no collusion with Russia. Can you talk a little bit more about where this report came from and if it's valid or accurate?
Well, since the inception of the FBI probe, the Republicans closest to Trump, in this case Cruz, I believe, was the senator particularly involved, they wrote a paper, the Republican caucus, with no input from the Democrats. They wrote a paper purporting to prove that because the FBI had used a dossier to assist them in finding information to serve warrants against Manafort and others, and that dossier was in part paid for by the Democratic Party, that therefore everything the FBI has done is invalid and unsupported, and it was all based on the dossier. Now the facts in the report, the Republican report, while edited, redacted, are accurate to an extent, but they're only part of the story. The Democrats have just released a report, which of course it took Trump a while to allow. And the Democrats have just released a report basically rebutting what Cruz's report said. I think you can take both of those with a grain of salt, and they are both political documents, especially Cruz's, which was authored solely for the effort of discrediting the FBI in this investigation.
I mean, it just this is obviously not over. This is going to continue, and it could take who knows how long to have some type of official verdict, correct?
Well, it is, and it will. And certainly there are already several indictments have been issued. I mean, those things are ongoing. You have plenty of people indicted. To get to the question of whether ultimately the president will be indicted, impeached, etc., that's still an open question. Whether or not there was personal knowledge and collusion by Donald Trump himself with the Russians is still not known. Certainly many of his family members, including his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, participated in meetings that would be on their face collusion with the Russians. If your mortal enemy says, come, we have information on your opponent and we can help you get elected, that's certainly something you should run from as fast as possible and turn them in to the appropriate authorities. Instead, the Trump campaign, while we don't know how much Donald Trump was involved, the Trump campaign clearly were involved with the Russians with the stated goal of influencing the election. Now we know since through all the investigative agencies, I think at least 17 agencies have agreed that the Russians significantly meddled in the election. We know through social media giants that they had sold literally hundreds of millions.
Well, that's definitely something I can chime in on here, too. Something came out recently that basically said there were hundreds of millions of Facebook advertising that was paid from certain Russian sources, and that is something that Facebook has now enacted policy change in where some of the money comes from their political advertising, where they're going to limit some of that money coming from political advertising. And from someone like me who's involved in social media, it's troubling because it's so easy on social media to just throw money at problems, and they're for-profit businesses, so I don't necessarily begrudge them, but they were also very willing and forthcoming with information about this, which is troubling going forward as far as, from my perspective and on social media. So I do think that that's extremely interesting as well.
And it is troubling. Social media in general is troubling to me because of the lacks of checks and balances and what goes on. Clearly, we know that the Russians employed hundreds, if not thousands of people, which we call trolls, whose sole job was to make up negative comments about Hillary Clinton, attribute them to fake Americans, and have those published in social media. Close electoral states were targeted, and there's no way to know if they did actually turn the election. But if 3 states combined had an 80,000 vote difference out of the enormous number of votes cast, and at the same time, literally hundreds of millions of fake ads and assorted comments on social media were seen by these individuals, it's hard to believe that there's not a certain percentage, if not a good percentage, of their votes were influenced by what they read, which of course was created by our enemy to dupe them.
So very interesting things obviously going on currently in the Trump White House, both with turnover and potential collusion with Russia. But I think we'll move on from this this topic. One of the things that you and I have talked about, and actually one of the original questions that I've been very interested. Unfortunately, and I found this just from speaking to friends, family, reading, local news organizations, and even just talking to students. Unfortunately, one of the things that our country is continuously not nearly knowledgeable enough as they should be is on local and statewide elections. You just got done talking in class today about how judges are appointed at the federal level, elected at more the state and local level. You made the point that, yes, on the local level, the election of judges is okay because most of the time these individuals are well known in the community and do represent and withhold the integrity of law. Then you also went on to say that you felt that statewide elections of judges is really against our best practices as a state of Pennsylvania. Now, you argued in front of the state Supreme Court, the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, for nearly 30 years. Can you just explain to the audience why, we wouldn't want to be able to elect somebody that's going to be a judge for a statewide court?
Well, the idea might have been sound when it was proposed. Prior to 1968, state appellate judges, upper court judges, were appointed just like at the federal level. The idea in the the Constitution of 68, the Pennsylvania's Constitution, was to give the people more of a voice and to change that from appointed to elected position. However, there are certain rules. There are a lot of rules under the ethical codes of lawyers, what you can advertise, what you can say, how much can you reveal to let people get to know you. And quite frankly, except for those people who do research, who maybe look up the Bar Association ratings, virtually no one has any idea anything about the statewide judges they're voting for. In my time before the court, I've argued cases before intelligent, thoughtful, considerate judges with good demeanor and good intelligence, and also before judges and Supreme Court justices who you really wouldn't hire as a law clerk, who just really did not have the expertise, but perhaps had a known family name in a given part of the state, and that was enough to sway the state electorate in their favor. A recent example, last year I believe there were 3 vacancies on the Superior Court. There were 6 candidates. The ultimate election, I think the person with the highest percentage of votes had 16.7 or 8, and the lowest among the 6 had 16.1 or 2.
That's incredible.
So it was pretty much just like throwing a dart at a wall or a rolling a dice. There was really no understanding that went into the election of the 3 that got picked. They might by happenstance be 3 good judges, but they might not have been the 3 best candidates. And no one really takes the time today. Some of us in the legal profession do, but the average person out there doesn't have the time or the knowledge or their interest in doing research into a statewide judicial candidate.
You'd mentioned for the statewide judicial candidate earlier about looking up the Bar Association ratings. Can you talk to us a little bit more about, so in the next time there is statewide judge elections, maybe people can at least have a place to go and to get some reliable information?
It's out there, and people should know about it. I recommend that one can look up any statewide judicial race, see who's running, get a complete dossier and evaluation of that candidate's capabilities. The Bar Association polls people who've argued before that court, other judges. They read the case writings, the decisions these judges have written. They do a complete workup and spend time. I previously, as a lawyer in practice, had been contacted by the Bar Association for my opinion regarding certain judges based on my experience. And what that does is you can look at, say, 5 judges running for a given office and find that 3 of them have stellar records, are good legal writers, have shown good thought, good reasoning, good decision-making capability. We're considerate of attorneys and people in the courtroom, and we're everything you would want in an appellate court judge. So maybe at that point you have 3 good candidates. Pick one. Pick one by affiliation, by name you like, whatever. But whoever you pick is going to be a fundamentally capable candidate. Maybe you find the other 2 not so much, that they've had bursts of anger in the courtroom, that their judicial opinions are not always sound, not well written, and those you can avoid. And that is really a valuable service. So I recommend in any election, if you go to the Pennsylvania Bar Association, you can surf around in their site and find their ratings of judges.
All right. Last thing that we wanted to chat about here today, we are here with John Butchar, former senior deputy attorney general in the state of Pennsylvania, and he's also a close friend of mine, and he's come down to my class several times. The last thing I wanted to talk about was something called the homestead exemption. This was on our ballot in last November 2017 election, and I just want to read over what it was and what a yes vote and what a no vote was, and then we're going to break this down so you can explain a little bit more about what this meant. Now, obviously, the election is in the past. The yes had won by about a 54 to 46, almost an 8-point margin here. But basically what it was doing is the Pennsylvania allow local taxing authorities to exempt the full value of the Homestead Amendment. So a yes vote supported this amendment to allow the state legislature to increase the amount of a home's assessed value that local taxing authorities, be it county, municipality, or school districts, are permitted to exempt from taxes. The amendment increased the amount from up to 50% of the median value of the homesteads in their jurisdiction to up to 100% of the assessed value for each homestead. A no vote opposed this amendment to allow the legislature to permit local taxing authorities to exempt up to 100% of the assessed value of each of the homestead from taxes. Rejection of the amendment would have kept the amount that local taxing authorities are permitted to exempt at up to 50% of the median level. So what we're talking about are we going to do 50%, exempt 50%, or are we going to exempt up to 100%? Here's the question. Much of that sounds very convoluted, very confusing, and to somebody who may not know exactly what all of these words mean, they might say, well, yeah, why shouldn't I be able to just exempt my home value from my taxes? Can you explain a little bit more about, number one, what was this specific vote intended to do, and what are some long-term repercussions of this yes vote passing last November?
Well, bottom line is the Pennsylvania Constitution requires uniform taxation between classes of individuals. And some years ago, there was an amendment made to allow local taxing districts to exempt up to 50% of the value of the home from tax. What this further amendment did was to change that and allow an exemption up to 100%. Now, that does not mean the exemption will necessarily be 50 or 100, but that's the maximum it can exempt. So this opens the door for the elimination of property taxes in this regard.
Which, as both of us are homeowners, for us to sit here today and say, if somebody came up to us and said, hey, what do you think about us just getting rid of your property taxes? We would probably, as homeowners, both say, well, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. However,
well, it does sound like a great idea, except that money has to be replaced from someplace. You can't just eliminate the property tax and not have, destructive effect on the school systems, et cetera. The way the exemption actually works too is A local district is kind of steered toward the exemption by, well, I will say, sort of the median value and the median income, kind of the wealth of the area. So I have a homestead exemption on my home in Cumberland County because I'm in a wealthier school district, Cumberland Valley. My maximum, under the prior law as constituted, up to 50% could be exempted, but our taxing authority in our area is only exempting a very small amount. So if I or you, Paul, look at your property tax in the fall, you'll see that there's a small homestead exemption. For other jurisdictions, which are usually the poorer school districts, that exempts up to 50%. And now with the new amendment could exempt up to 100%. That, of course, has a devastating effect on those local school districts because they are already populated by a population that has homes of less value and contributes less otherwise. There are other ramifications. It is only owner-occupied properties that are potentially exempt from part or all the tax down the road. And so rental properties, there's no exemption. The landlord does not get an exemption because it's not a homestead. It's kind of a business property. So there's no break for the renters. So it certainly does favor those who are homeowners over those who are not, who can't own property or are unable to own property. And it does require funding of the school districts through other sources. So when candidates are saying, let's just exempt the property tax, let's get away with the property tax. Well, but they're also not saying, well, okay, we're going to do that by raising the state income tax from 3.25% to 6.8% kind of thing. So it's kind of a hollow victory if you have some property taxes removed, but you're paying for it otherwise.
So the final question I have for you on this specific, the homestead exemption, why did they word it in such a way? I mean, I like to think that I'm relatively up on politics. I try to be as civically engaged as I possibly can. When I read this, it reads like if I were to vote yes, that's actually a good thing for me, and you explain that it isn't. Why are these sort of amendments and things, referenda on the ballots, why are they written in this way?
Well, quite frankly, it's usually the party pushing that particular amendment or part of their agenda often write them so they're impossible to understand for the average person voting. So your first impulse might be, oh, that sounds good, without having any idea of what the full ramifications are. They basically garbled on purpose.
Well, John, I really appreciate the time today. You are, an awesome, not only reference for myself, but also an amazing speaker. You came to class and you talked wonderfully about your career and shared some inspirational stories. So I really appreciate that. And we certainly look forward to having you back again and certainly having you back on the podcast when we can talk more things, maybe a little closer to the election in November.
Thank you, Paul. That's been my pleasure.
And thank you. All right. So for Professor Paul Miller and for former Senior Deputy Attorney General John Butchar, this is the Nightly News Podcast, and we'll catch you again next time.